Welcome to the Money Insights Podcast, where high-income earners come to learn wealth-building strategies that will take them from high income to high net worth. With your hosts, financial and wealth-building experts, Christian Allen and Rod Zabriskie.
Welcome into another episode of the Money Insights Podcast. I'm your host, Christian Allen. With me, as always, Rod the Pod Zabriskie. Rod, what's going on, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. The air is crisp and getting chilly.
It's crisp, getting chilly, and you're sitting on a 7-0 record as a BYU Cougar fan.
It just feels so good.
Holy smokes.
Especially the last win.
Yeah.
Anytime
Yeah. Well, obviously the rivalry win's huge. That's like, makes a big difference in the season. Even if you mess up along the way, like things don't go at the end of the season, at least you have that.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
I feel it. All right. Anything else new going on? It's did I tell you that I am completely ready for Halloween? I've got the 12-foot skeleton out there. Yep. I've got the headless horseman out there, 10 feet. I might have gone through this once already, but anyway,
I didn't know
I'm just very excited about the Halloween stuff.
Yeah. Well,
we've got a crazy howling ghoul out there. We've got a family of skeletons.
Oh,
yeah.
It's growing.
Witches, bats. It's all sorts of fun.
That's awesome.
I had someone come over to the house the other day, and they walked into the door and they knocked on the first thing they said was like, "Oh, welcome to Halloween." I was like, "Yes, well, welcome to Halloween." Well, my kids love Halloween,
start
so
singing,
we just leaned into
Halloween
it.
Or anything, right?
No, they didn't. Oh, and speaking of Halloween, Kate, first official job is at Spirit Halloween, so it just fits. It just fits. She's working at Spirit Halloween for basically a couple of months. I mean, now there's only a few weeks left, right? But anyway, so fun stuff. This is a good time of year, Rod. It's a good time of year to talk about money.
Yes.
And specifically, we're going to talk about the FIRE movement. Now, I've got to be honest with you. I kind of thought this topic was fading a little bit. So I have to wonder, Rod, you didn't ask me this, but when I sent the outline across your desk, I wondered if you were going to be like, do people still talk about it? Well, I got a strange barrage of things coming my way in the social media world that were around FIRE. And so I was like, and then I do what I always do. I checked it. And according to Jarvis, there is still a strong contingency in this FIRE movement. So what are we going to do
about it as well?
We're going to talk about where FIRE gets it right, and we're going to talk about where we think FIRE gets it wrong. Right? So a little bit lighthearted. We'll try to be nice, right? And I want to just we're going to start with the places that it gets it right. We want to build off of those foundational elements, the things we have in common, right? We're going to build the relationship of trust. Yeah. Then we're going to peel back the onion and be like, okay, but here's where we have some serious problems. By the way, there are some serious problems.
Yeah. Should we define it first in case there are people who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, please define it.
Yeah, so FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early. And it's just these people who are dead set on, I'm going to retire by 35.
Yep.
40.
But there's a very specific methodology to accomplishing this, right?
Yes.
Typically, it's not like I'm going to start this incredible business, make it big, and then sell my business and retire at 35. Yeah. That is not and to be fair, that would be a bad plan because that's a hard thing to accomplish. And you'd probably need a little bit of good fortune on your side to accomplish that, right?
For sure.
So now building a business and all that, that's great. But having a plan that's like, hey, I'm going to do this and retire, that's maybe a little sketchy. However, their plan is actually repeatable, right? So it is a doable plan, even if you're unable to hit it big.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because what are they doing? They're basically saying, I'm going to live like I'm going to live as scarcely as I possibly can, save as much as I possibly can, so that I can then accomplish this ultimate goal. And we'll talk about, we'll get into some of the details of, what that looks like. Well, and maybe you should just say it now. The whole idea is to get to 25 times your income. And again, I'm not going to give any opinions on this at this moment, but the goal is to get the 25 times your income, because the idea is that I can live off of 25 times my income for a sustained period of time. Yep. I'm just holding my tongue right now. I'm not going to say anything else to that.
This is the philosophy behind it.
That is the philosophy behind FIRE, as I understand it. And it's all based on your kind of, creating the net worth or the cash accumulated value that I can use the 4% rule.
And
right.
And if you accept that by living a simplistic lifestyle, you can both get there quickly, save to the point where you have that 25x accomplished, and you continue to live simplistically, so that you can maintain your lifestyle on what you've done.
Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't have any judgment on this in terms of like, I don't judge people for I think that there really genuinely are some real virtues around the concept of saying, hey, I'm not going to be focused on living this extravagant lifestyle. This way of living works for us. It gives us the freedom, the comfort, that's what feels good for, I totally have a lot of appreciation and respect for people who do that. Okay, Rod, I know you don't ever watch Real Housewives of Salt Lake. I know that's never happened in your lifetime.
That is correct.
I'm 100% certain.
That is correct.
I, however, do indulge with Heather occasionally, or maybe each week, in the Real Housewives of Salt Lake. It's one of those weird guilty pleasures. But after, Rod, they did this like, do you remember the show Wife Swap? Do you remember the concept Wife Swap? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I was like, so maybe some context. Rod and TV, he watches sports and maybe some History Channel, but probably not much.
And else. Shark Tank, that's about it.
Okay, Shark Tank too. Okay, that's right.
But I just record it. I'm not planning my schedule around it. It's just there when I'm ready to watch it. It's just
the good news is you've got 20 seasons. You can
they're
go back and they just keep going.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, watching Real Housewives of Salt Lake, they're doing at the end of it, this week they did some wife swap thing where one of the Real Housewives swapped a life with a lady in Idaho, and it was a lady who lived totally off the grid. Their family, she had some rheumatoid arthritis or something, and they decided we need to live grow our own stuff. They don't have running water.
Oh, wow.
They're miles off the grid, right? They have to go each day and go down to the well and bring water up and all sorts of stuff.
Wow.
Okay. And can I just say, their family seemed very happy and they had a good life doing what they were doing. But here's what was really interesting. And the reason I brought this up is because I was saying, I don't judge anybody for that. I don't. I think it's really cool for the people who want to live that way. Now, what was really interesting to me, Rod, is that she, on the other hand, was quite judgmental, because anyone who didn't live the simplistic lifestyle that she does is missing out on the real goodness of the world,
Gotcha.
And so the point I was going to get at is it just goes both ways. Now, we don't care one way or the other. Our goal is to help people build wealth the most efficient, effective way possible. And so when we look at this, we're not looking at it in the form of judgment toward the way that people choose to live their lifestyle. We're looking at it as what's the effectiveness of the principles around the wealth building strategy, the wealth building philosophy itself. Do you think I captured that okay?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that'll play out as we go, because again, we're going to give our opinions on it, and you'll know by the end where we stand as it relates to our response to the philosophy. But the people who are choosing that, they're choosing it because that's what they want, and they're okay with that. And maybe if they're listening to this, they'll hear where we see there might be flaws, and maybe learn a few things and approach it a little differently.
So that's a really good point, because we're not suggesting someone needs to change their lifestyle. Yeah. However, we might suggest a couple of things that someone could say oh, this could put a wrench in the plan as it's laid out in the fire philosophy.
Yeah.
Right. I need to consider how strong the foundation is, how well that's actually going to work. Because that's at the end of the day, what the goal is, to help people accomplish their goals, right?
Yes.
Not our goals, their goals. Okay, Rod. So we're going to start on, we have 5 places that we feel like fire gets it right. So we're going to start with where fire gets it right. Number 1, Rod, everybody loves this concept. We are right in line with it. We love the idea of reclaiming your financial autonomy, right? The goal of just being financially independent, not having the stress and the pressure of money running our lives is really like powerful. It's impactful, and it does without question improve a person's overall quality of life. Is that fair?
Yeah, for sure. And the other angle that I think of it from is the idea that I'm taking control. I'm taking authority, so to speak, over my finances instead of handing it off to somebody else and thinking they're going to get me to where I want to be. Maybe they will.
Good
Maybe
call.
they will, but that's you should be the kind of quarterback of your own financial world.
Yeah, that's actually a good angle. And when I initially caught that, I was just kind of thinking about creating financial independence, but it's a good point. You're saying, hey, I'm not going to rely on what everybody else is saying and doing. I'm going to take control of this. And in Rod's own words, I'm going to take control of my own destiny, right?
Yes.
We're going to be the master of our own destiny as it relates to money. And we can absolutely get on board with that. So fire gets that right. The second place fire gets it right is they question traditional retirement timelines. That's an important distinction because there's pretty similar methodology from what like the typical retirement strategy is.
Yeah.
But the timeline is different, right? So I like the idea that it's like, hey, I don't want to live that work from 20 to 67 and hope I'm healthy enough to be able to travel and live a great retired life.
Yeah.
Because that ignores, a lot of the opportunities and possibilities that I could, have in between that time frame, right? So that idea resonates with me. And of course, they're saying, hey, look, we're going to accelerate that timeline so that we can live life more on our own terms. From my perspective, that's a good thing.
Yeah, for sure. I like questioning that. And a common traditional retirement approach is live like no one else during your working years. So you can live the high life in retirement, or live like no one else. Live the high life in retirement. But again, if that means I making a conscious choice to not do the things I really want to do while I'm young and healthy and just wanting to live life, and I'm deferring all of that to this point where, okay, now I'm ready to retire. Even if it was a little earlier, 60 or 55 or whatever, that's what most people think of as early retirement. Even if that's the case, still, I don't want to not be doing the things that I feel like would be fulfilling and the bucket list kind of stuff or whatever while I'm still young, and do it. Like do it now and build towards doing it later.
Yeah. There's got to be some balance. But again, at the end of the day, fire is questioning that and doing something different, and we can respect that. They also prioritize freedom and flexibility over consumerism. And I absolutely think that there is a problem with consumerism. And specifically what I mean by that is people consume more than they are able to like make, right? They're consuming more than they're actually able to. And anytime that's there, you're going to have obviously there's no possible way to build wealth inside that framework. It doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, you spend more than you make.
Yeah, so there's like fire has like very direct principles that I'm going to make whatever I make, I'm going to live off of 25% of that so that, X% can go into these other places. And shows some real discipline. Which actually gets us into our number 4, Rod, which is understanding the power of high savings rates and discipline. At the core of wealth building, there has to be some level of discipline, right?
Yeah. And an understanding of what it takes to get to your goals, whatever your goals are. If you feel like, oh, well, I feel good because I have my W-2 job, I contribute to my 401k, they match 3%. So I feel good that that's that forced savings before it even hits my bank account. I know I'm saving towards retirement. They're matching it. That turns my 3 into 6.
Boom.
And that's going to do it for me. And I'm afraid to say, if that is all you're doing, then whatever you think of it as retirement is going to have to be simplistic, because
you're not going to have the money to live that life.
And most people are shocked to know, especially if you don't start saving until you're into your 30s and especially into your 40s, you got to save 20, 30, 40% of your income if you think you're going to be ready to retire, and or do some of the other things that we teach in terms of velocity and cash flow and tax optimization, these other principles to accelerate it. Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. But at the core, like, we agree with Fire in that being a disciplined saver has to be at the foundation of building wealth, right? Yeah. I've got to be saving more than what I'm making, and the bigger gap I can create between those two things, regardless of what philosophy I use for the wealth building, I'm just going to be better off, right? I'm not even now. We'll get into the philosophy on wealth building here in a second, but regardless of that, having a strong savings rate, being disciplined, will always put us in a better place. So Fire absolutely gets that right. And then the last one that we like about Fire is that they're good at creating a community around financial education. And as many things as I disagree with on Fire, I do believe that this is probably a net positive for a lot of people, because especially if it takes you from a place of like very little financial education, even if we don't agree on the principles on the philosophy and way that they're actually getting there, the fact that people are trying to get there and showing some discipline, living on some sort of principles, that to me is positive and valuable.
Yeah, totally agree. Having that community, and it's, what's funny is on the traditional side, you might say there's community because that's just the way people assume. Well, yeah, of course you contribute to your 401k, and of course you invest in the stock market, and that's just what people do, right? Is that community? I don't know. It feels like lemmings.
There's a lot of people doing it, but there's not a lot of conversation around like there really isn't like, hey, like, let's create a community around how do we optimize our 401ks? Like, it's just kind of a given that everybody's doing those things, and there's general financial stuff out there everywhere. It's the prominent material voice content, but I wouldn't call it a community.
No, because that's more likely just
something different.
There, ubiquitous. So, because that's the more likely the person who is choosing a financial advisor and just handing the reins over to them and saying, "Here, go help me get to retirement." Right? And I'm going to go play golf, or I'm going to go,
just make sure I can do that, and we're good. Yeah. Yep. Okay, Rod. Now we get to go to. We're going to flip the script a little bit, and we're going to go to where Fire goes wrong. Now that we've built on, those foundational elements that we have in common, we're going to talk a little bit about where we drift apart. Yeah. And we're going to start with a massive problem, which is the over-fixation on net worth instead of cash flow. Okay. So anybody listening to this, Rod, maybe give kind of a quick IWB framework, just so that we're kind of, we talked about what the Fire philosophy is. Let's not take for granted that everybody listening to it automatically knows our philosophy.
Yeah. So IWB stands for Invest with Benefits. So we ourselves do this. We work with a lot of people who invest in alternative assets, things that are not stocks, bonds, mutual funds, building your own business, real estate, oil and gas, all kinds of different ways to go out and invest. And why? because within that investing framework, you can do things that you don't get on the traditional side. And we have 6 core principles that exist within that. The first one is leverage. So we use leverage in ways while we're investing in real estate or while we're building a business or things like that you just don't do. Most people aren't doing in the traditional side. Velocity means getting my money turned as quickly as possible from one deal to the next. The quicker I can turn things over, the more I accelerate that growth. Cash flow is a big one. And this is basically going against what we're going to talk about in this point and the next one. And that is that within FIRE and the traditional retirement world, accumulation is the key. You have to accumulate enough assets, get to a certain threshold where now when you turn around and retire on that money, you make sure that it doesn't run out before you die. We take the philosophy where let's actually create streams of income, cash flow coming off of investments that I don't have to worry about running out of money by the time I die, because it's just a continual stream coming off of those assets, and that I'm not depleting the assets. I'm just living off of what it produces.
And even better, like the philosophy is about building assets throughout the entirety of our lives. Like there's no reason that if you put things together in the right way, there ever has to come a curve where suddenly I'm in depletion mode. I can create the streams of income, increase those over time, and increase the assets by which I'm creating those streams of income. And that's just a totally different way of thinking about building wealth, and just so much more effective.
Yep, for sure. So leverage, velocity, cash flow, those are the first 3. Okay. And the next 3 there is tax optimization. There's just so much we can do to increase the returns we get, the wealth building process, if we focus on ways that we can optimize or, save on taxes, not just tax deferral, right?
Yeah.
401k, I'm deferring paying the tax later, but there are things I can do while I am investing to get tax deductions that I don't ever have to come back and pay.
Well, and it's about like intentionality and not just accepting that the only option is that I have to put my only tax vehicle is a 401k or IRA. Like it's different, because we're saying, hey, there's more that can be done. And some of it is just, again, by what we invest in. So going back to the alternative asset investing, and I should say, like, at the end of the day, our goal is to bring together the best of both worlds, right? We don't want to eliminate the good things from the traditional space, but we definitely want to augment those with the powerful elements that come in the alternative side of things. So obviously, and then when we bring those together, we create the most optimized outcome. But tax is a huge part of that. And a lot of it is just being proactive and not accepting that status quo that I have to do it this way. There's really no other options.
Yeah.
Because there are.
Yep. And then the last 2, asset protection and estate maximization. So just saying, hey, while I'm building, I also need to make sure that I do certain things to protect that, people attacking it, etc., liability, other things. And then estate maximization, when I pass, doing the things intentionally while I'm living to make it pass on most efficiently to wherever I want it to go. Whether it's my family, charities, whatever.
Perfect. Okay. I think that's important, because then as we're just kind of making these distinctions as we go through it, it'll be a little bit easier for people to follow. Okay. So, well, what's the problem with this over-fixation on net worth instead of cash flow? Well, the big thing is, we talked about this early on, it's the 25 times net worth, right? Once I get to that point, I can therefore live off of my net worth, live off of the assets that I've accumulated. Well, guess what? It's not a very sturdy way to do it. It's not a very foundation. Like the foundation is fully cracked right down the middle, right? There's like a chance that it can work for you, but there's also a large chance that it may not. Okay. So the 4% rule is what it's actually doing, right? And we, riff on, make fun of the 4% rule. We've been doing it for 10, 15 years. And it's still just like out there. It just gets changed. The form changes a little bit. And FIRE grabbed hold of this and like leaned straight into it. Well, guess what? The problem with that is, not only does it not work in the traditional world, because people are living longer, even when you stop at 65 and I've got 30, 25, 30 years to make my money work, I'm going to be sitting at a 70 or 80% chance of success, meaning that I have $1 left at that point at the end of my life, right? Which would be a little bit frightening for many years before that point. But guess what happens if I double the time frame?
Yeah.
Right? Now suddenly I'm asking those same assets to run a much longer period. Well, it just increases the risk that I actually can't do it. Now I'm just forcing myself to live as minimalistic as possible. And maybe now it's not so fun. It's, it's not because I'm choosing to, it's because I don't have any other choice.
Right.
And at the core of it, the 4% rule isn't and shouldn't be anybody's foundation for retiring. It's just been proven out already. So many, like, you can go to independent research. Don't even listen to us. Go to independent research on the 4% rule, and you'll find really quickly how many problems exist within it. And the reality is while it's worked for some people, it's also hurt a lot of people along the way. So
Yeah.
you got to be aware of that.
And in that research, you'll find not just problems that exist, but then ways that you can address it. So I attended a conference here recently. So Wade Pfau, last name is spelled Pfau. Go look at his stuff, because he has spent a decade or more on this topic and has found half a dozen ways that you can do better, have more income in retirement, have it be more secure, predictable, last longer than the 4% rule.
Yeah, and what's interesting about his stuff is it's not as like it's not as far over to the alternative world. Like, he's still even doing it and playing inside that traditional space. He's just adding some other asset types that can create more predictable returns, and give you a place that basically what he does is says, hey, if I can create and if I can have assets that are doing something different at the time when the market's dropping, then I suddenly I have a chance to make things work better. So basically what he says is, instead of just using the market, I can use a combination of the market with life insurance and annuity, or some variation of those, to create a better outcome, a higher probability outcome than I would just by running on the 4% rule. And it's not particularly close.
Yep, exactly. And to be clear, he is still working on that accumulation platform.
Yep.
He's just figured out, again, by research, by a very, I don't know, he's a professor, right? He's a professor, and he's like a mathematician. And so by like the hard evidence, he's going in and showing, hey, here's this over here, the 4% rule.
He's
but look at this
taking
over
a
here.
scientific approach to these concepts, not just like, hey, I like this better. At the end of the day, he doesn't have a dog in the fight in terms of what assets you use. He's just saying, by doing these things, this creates a much better probability of success, period.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, good stuff. So go check out Wade Pfau. Okay, so we talked about the 4% rule, Rod, but the next one I hit on a little bit. We'll hit on it a little bit more here, because, man, the mentality change is as big as anything. Like, so often we talk about, hey, one of the big differences is that we're in the alternative space. But a big part of the change in the way that we teach people to build wealth has as much to do with the mentality. And it's this mentality of, I'm going to accumulate, then deplete. It's just such a dangerous way to build wealth and live life, because what it does is it creates this loop of, I've got to make sure that my money lasts. And so it's always about a fear of running out of money, right? And all of my actions are based on, I've got to have enough accumulation here so that I can deplete it and not run out at the end. And the problem is there's too many variables, right? We don't know those things. And so the only choice we have is to feel comfortable is to overbuild. And if we don't overbuild, then we just are uncomfortable with the situation. And probably, you talk about this a lot, where people get to retirement and they don't want to bring their money out. right?
Right. They
They're
don't
too
dare.
scared to actually take their money out because they, if they spend it, they suddenly increase the risk that they might run out later. And
Mhm.
in my mind, I'm just like, who wants to live that lifestyle? Well, the problem is it's just kind of what people knew. Because why?
Yeah.
The narrative was, this is what you do. The narrative, it's not just was, the narrative is this is what you do. Now, I think there's like a groundswell inside the alternative world, inside of this, like, hey, maybe this isn't the only way to do this thing.
Mhm.
But it's still not anywhere near the prominent narrative, right? FIRE just took like a really extreme view of the traditional retirement philosophy. And that's what they did. That's all they did. They compressed the timelines, they increased the saving rates, and then therefore the idea is that they can increase the retirement stage, right? Or the I don't have to work stage. But they
Yeah.
also increased the danger and possibility of running out of money.
Especially if you're already living that simple lifestyle, how do you cut back any more than that?
Right.
You're
You're
kind of
like,
forced into
no
that
more running
situation.
water. What else do we do? I don't know where
Yeah.
you go after you've cut out the
Yeah.
water and electricity. You know what I mean? Okay. Well, I get it. That's a little bit extreme. Most people aren't doing that. But anyway, okay. Here's the next one. The FIRE gets wrong. They ignore tax strategy and efficiency. So we hit on this a little bit. I haven't heard any tax strategy spoken of. I don't know. I did some more reading up from different articles and what people are talking about, and I heard little to nothing around the impact and effective taxation, which is again so ironic because the place that they're telling people to save is typically where? In qualified accounts, which by the way is another challenge because suddenly I've got to get my money out of an account that's built to not get money out of till you're 59 and a half, but I've got to do it before then.
Yeah. So it's all that excess
Nuts.
savings that you have to put somewhere else so you can live off of the non-tax qualified money first before you can get into that world.
Yeah.
Right. And but yeah, I mean, I agree that in terms of tax strategy, maybe they go Roth instead of pre-tax.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think that
oh.
would be like the extent of the tax
But
strategy.
yeah,
Like,
but that's still
hey, if
tax
you want to
qualified
think
planning,
about
right?
tax strategy, try Roth. And I think that that's probably out there. Um, and so, like, we agree that using a Roth is probably a better option than using a traditional
Mm-hmm.
IRA. But again, there's still challenges that come with it, right?
Yep. Yeah.
I'm
Because again,
still in a relationship with the government and the IRS in that situation.
exactly, because we're contrasting it with getting off of that. Go find tax strategy that exists. And again, all tax strategy is built because of tax code, which obviously comes from the government. But what we're saying is if it's all 401k Roth, then I'm putting the money in a place where now I have to live by whatever rules they come up with that can change, do change.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm doing it in a place where I get tax deductions that create tax savings, I'm not just pushing the tax down the road, I'm eliminating it, then I'm on my own, right? I have
Yeah,
more
and it
wealth.
gives you an
I have
opportunity to accelerate things in a
yes.
different, in a unique way. And obviously
Exactly.
now you have more money that you can use leverage with. And anyway, it just kind of, it compounds on itself, which at the end of the day is really what we're looking for here, right?
Yep.
Compounding money on itself. Okay. Ignores tax strategy, focus on retiring from something instead of building towards something. This is one of, and I think this is kind of just the opposite end of the accumulate then deplete mindset. But this is again just one I really believe in. The difference that I've seen firsthand, and I tell this story all the time. Like I tell the story whenever we're out there doing presentations and stuff. I talk about my path from traditional financial planning to where we are today, and it came from firsthand experience of seeing people who did things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was it. When I started to get in front of consistently in front of people that had built significant wealth, I started noticing some really key differences between what I was teaching people, what we were seeing, and what they were doing. And one of the biggest things here, going back to this mindset thing, is just that it's always about building toward. It's always about creation. It's like there's never a situation where I'm thinking about, going backward. That's counterintuitive to the whole idea of my life of building wealth. You know what I mean? And that's what I started to see in these people. That wasn't part of their mindset. It was always about growth. And to me, that's just such a huge and valuable concept to be focused on.
Yeah. And maybe I can hit it from a little different angle, from the standpoint, on that traditional track, people get so focused on retirement. My goal is, this is when I'm going to retire. And I've just seen it a bunch. Then they get there and they're like, oh, now what do I do with myself?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. Retire from, like, hey, I don't want to work anymore. So I'm going to do everything I can to get there. And then they get there and then nothing. Or I've even seen people who get to that point, and then maybe they saw other people retire before them who ran into that dilemma of like, okay, well, now what do I do with myself? And they're like, well, I don't want that. So I'm just going to keep working. And all of a sudden they're into their, mid 70s and they're still working. And they're like, I don't know that I ever want to retire because I don't want that.
Yeah. It's
Whereas if maybe all along they had had that building mindset that what is my life going to take on that I'm working toward, rather than I just got to retire, get away from work, and not putting any thought into what it's going to look like when you get there. Very different mindset.
Yeah. And that's like such a black and white mindset, right? The idea that it's like, if I retire, I have to either work or not work. Now, obviously more and more people are starting to take on projects and like get there, but that's the point, right? Working toward purpose.
Yes.
And if you're the architect of your life, and let's say I know that I don't want to work my whole life in work for somebody, a lot of people work for a certain period of time, even in like a lot of people that go down the track we're on. I'll give you an example. We see this a lot. We see it with physicians as an example. Physicians work hard. They're in a place where they can make a lot of money. They start investing passively, and they then start to scale back. And like their world becomes, it's still work, but it's a work they enjoy more. That's probably less pressure. That's on their terms. And so, you're moving into this place of purpose where you're continuing to build. So it's not like you're worried about leaving your work and suddenly running out of money, because you're actually leaving your work to continue to build your wealth. It's just in a little bit of a different way. And so kind of a mindset, man, that just is so much more powerful. And again, if you think about it, like it's pretty easy to see your graph. If you're doing that, it just goes up. And if you go with the accumulation methodology, it goes like this. And for those of you not watching, which is probably most of you, it's going down. So that's a problem. Okay. Rooted in scarcity rather than abundance. I think now, again, it's not to say that like the simplicity part of it is a bad thing. So I don't want to suggest like scarcity in the sense that like, oh, I don't want to have like nice things. That's not what this is really about. Like the principles around it. The 4% rule in and of itself is built around a scarcity mindset of what do I have to do to not run out of money? It's all built on principles that I can use to not run out of money. It's not built on how can I continue to grow my wealth. So just by nature of the way that the way that we think about that, it is a scarcity mentality. I think that's kind of the direction we're thinking on that. Do you have any other thoughts on it?
Nope. I think that hits exactly what I was thinking of.
Okay, Rod. Avoids leverage and other advanced. We've talked a little bit about that, but our principles: leverage, velocity, cash flow, tax optimization, asset protection, estate maximization. Those 6 principles just almost entirely get ignored, right?
Yeah.
Like almost entirely. Now, I'm not suggesting that nobody's in that world is, buying any insurance. It's not, you know what I mean, for, to cover their assets and things like that. But it's certainly not to to the extent that you get in kind of the wealth building world that we live in. And part of it is just because they are living more simplistic, more scarcity. And so there's just less money that exists there. Right.
Yeah.
And then, kind of come over here. There's more we have to protect.
Yeah. Or if all of they're doing is putting it into a 401k, well, that naturally brings some asset protection with it.
Yeah.
That's all you've got.
That's
then
fair.
Okay, you're good.
So you've got your asset protection covered. So the plan, we can check it off on there. But it's less intentional, right? It's just less intentional. And my experience is that the kind of the wealth builders tend to be more intentional about asset protection, as an example. But really all of those things, using leverage, creating velocity, all of those things are very, very different and almost don't exist inside of the traditional space. Okay. And last but not least, Rod, it is challenging to scale if you're a high income earner, right? So if you're trying to live the same lifestyle that maybe that's just counterintuitive to the whole FIRE thing, right? Like, you're probably not, but it's just a really difficult thing because the numbers expand, the risk gets bigger, and that's just the way it works. So scaling it as a high income earner ends up being, a really challenging. And if I'm being honest, I don't typically see the FIRE people and the high income earners in the same space. Now, maybe that's because we primarily play in the alternative world. And maybe there probably is like a group of high income earners that just are like crazy about this, super intense. But most of the high income earners that we deal with fit more into that, like, I want to create, build, live with purpose, architect of my life, create a legacy, all of those kinds of things.
And I actually see it from the other side of, to really live the FIRE movement, you almost have to have a fairly high income. Because if you're living on like $50,000 a year, how are you going to save enough to build?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
25x by 35.
Well, I guess
40.
it's
almost
easy,
like
Rod. If you live off the grid, then, and I only need $15,000 a year.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible. I honestly don't know if that's even possible. But yeah, I get what you're saying. That does make sense. You're saying like, okay, if I'm going to live that, I've got to have enough money to save to create something substantial enough that it can actually support any lifestyle.
And those are the people that I've seen when they're, making a big deal about, hey, I'm out of debt. I'm, whatever. I've done all these things. And then they break it down and it's, oh, well, we make $250,000 a year and we live off of 50 of it. And again, that great. If that's you can get there pretty quick. Right.
Yeah. That's a fair point. You're right. The more I think about it, there's truth. Cause obviously if I make 50,000, it's going to be really hard to save 50% of that. If I make 500,000, it's more realistic that I could save that big chunk.
Yep.
More realistic. Like that'd still be a lot to say, but anyway. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, there's our list, Rod. We had 5 things that we had in common with FIRE. And I think we have 7 or 8 things where we diverge. But I felt like that we were respectful, at least, to the FIRE movement, don't you?
As long as they don't think that we think all of them are trying to live off of grid. Because I know they're not all quite going
and
that.
Not
that
only
extreme.
are not all of them, I think very, very few are trying to live off of grid. That was clearly
we were using that
an
as
extreme fun example.
Yeah, extreme. Yeah.
I don't think anybody thought that I was being serious there. Nobody I know is living off grid. That was for TV, right?
Oh man, I know
to
people.
Make it real fun. Okay, well there are people, and you probably know them because you live out in the sticks, or at least did live out in the sticks. But honestly, I've never met anyone personally that's like actually living off the grid. So there you have it. Okay, Rod, this has been fun. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, I thought it was fun too.
All right. Instead of going FIRE, go IWB. That's my final concluding thoughts.
Perfect.
Sweet. Okay, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Money Insights podcast. To learn more about the financial and business strategies discussed in this show, please visit moneyinsights.net. The views and opinions expressed on the Money Insights podcast are not intended to be individual financial, tax, or legal advice. Always consult with the appropriate advisor before making financial decisions. And if you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will help others find the show and learn wealth building strategies for themselves. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.